Critical Healthy Meals. And he is just an amazing human being and an angel in my life as well. But today it's about Mark's book. Mark's book is called Healing Our Community, One Recipe at a Time. I just have to say, knowing Mark for the last over a little bit over a year that I've gotten a blessing of actually getting to know him, I never really knew. I thought the book was going to be about recipes. Now, don't get me wrong, there's recipes in here too. I thought the book was going to be about his life as a gourmet chef and all the celebrities he was going to meet. And guess what? Well, talks about a little bit about his career and his life as well. Maybe about his education, maybe about his culinary skills, maybe about his travels. And sure, and there's a little bit of that in here too. What I did not know is that when Mark wrote this book and you start reading it, it takes you into the mind of somebody that cares. It takes you into the mind of somebody that's done his research. It takes you into the mind of somebody that really has literally defined a prescription, a recipe for what could be health and healing for the human body and hopefully the world. Mark, it's such a blessing to have you, man. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be together every Tuesday for about the next month, and we are going to go cover to cover with this book, man. And I'm telling you, I really honestly did not know this was what you wanted to do. I did not know, man. This was not what I expected. And first of all, tell me, how did it feel when you finally finished this masterpiece? Mark, how did it feel when you finally finished the masterpiece? How did it feel?
Exciting. It was a work in progress for a long time. Is a lot of time and effort actually went into actually doing the research and stuff. But when it was finally written and it was published, and I saw the responses of people, I think I became overwhelmed. I think it was a humbling experience. That people actually were able to actually dive into the book and read it, and was able to illustrate some of the benefits that they could have actually seen, how it could have benefited themselves, their family, and their community. And I think that is exactly what I wanted to do in this book.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I wrote some things down here. So, and I did not want to forget this. The biggest thing I think about it is that you really truly engulf what it is to, you're talking about education, you're talking about income, you're talking about culture. You started the book with something that I did not think. This is not a chef. This is somebody that literally has taken the time to to find out what is it about this world and humanity that we need to figure out. And here's the thing, none of these things, Mark, none of these things are difficult, man. These are not things that are science. This is not rocket science. None of this is rocket science. This is literally things that are very simple, but yet we just don't do. We're not doing it. And I love this you talked about promoting a culture for diversity and inclusion, equal education to everybody involved, from parents to teachers, social workers, civic and religious leaders, culture on youth organization. You're literally saying we all have a part in this. So why are we not doing it, Mark? What have you learned?
Okay, so let me back up a little bit. I mean, for this segment, we're talking about hope, health, and healing, right? And everything actually culminates. Health is really the complete physical, mental, social, emotional well-being. Is that really just being sickness or disease free? We talk about hope as having this positive impact on healing. It kind of like describes our outlook on life, and it kind of enhances our psychological and physical well-being. Healing then is the process of restoration. Our community needs to be restored, and it's not necessarily only healing from an imbalance or disease situation. It talks about healing of your mind, your body, your soul, and your spirit. And when we talk here about nutrition, we can't only just look at fortifying or providing or obtaining those nutrients that are necessary for growth and development of our body, but we need to nourish our mind. We need to nourish the soul and the body and the spirit and stuff. So, it's a whole encompassing tool. When I started to actually write this book and doing the research, it came as a result of my observations of some of the reasons for the decline I see in our community, and I want to offer some thoughts and some write-ups that would paint an evocative picture that would arrest your brain cells as how we all as a community can overcome these challenges. The information is there, and this was like way back from when we thought about anything like an epidemic now. But I think sometimes we're not paying attention to what's there, and the book was just to create some kind of folder, some kind of masterpiece that people can go to as a reference. Because sometimes we all need this kind of like this gentle push, this gentle nudge, this accountability coach. So what I wanted to do is to be one of the person who can be an accountability coach. It's not to say that the information is not there, but we need sometimes this push in terms so that we can harness this goal of healing our community.
And to follow that, so you talked about in order to heal, we have to diagnose the problem. And I love that because when you talk about diagnosing, I think of defining, right? So, and we're talking about defining health. And defining health is mental, physical, spiritual, right? Social, all those things encompass what we're supposed to do as a humanity. And I mean, listen, brother, I feel like, I feel like there's so much about you, Mark, that I didn't even know. I did not know that this was inside of you. And I'm just saying that because I think that maybe people are going to get to know inside of you, man, that um, I really truly believe they didn't know. This is so, you talk about, you literally lay out plans in this book. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is just part one. Today we're going to go over just part one of this book. And we're going to spend the next few weeks going over this, but I'm telling you, you have to get this book and just kind of go detail by detail. I think it'll change your mind about nutrition. It'll change your mind about society. It change your mind about culture. He talks about culture in good and bad. You define culture in such a beautiful way. And I wanted to share this real quick. Is that develop a treatment plan and then institute a prevention plan towards a reoccurrence. And you say these things, but I think about it from a cancer point of view. For me having cancer and reoccurring cancer 2 times, right? So I think about reoccurrence and I think of why is it that we're not learning? And I don't know, I want you to tell me a little. Is that what you were thinking? That maybe we're just not learning the first time and we're just continue to make the same mistakes?
Right. So, as I was just saying a while ago, sometimes we do not always understand the underlying factors. You just mentioned before about socioeconomics, and to break it down a little further, it's about education, income, and culture. First of all, we need to be educated, right? It Studies have actually shown that people who are at the lower
Low
end
income.
of the economic structure are more prone to or susceptible for environmental exposure um, in terms of of their work and in terms of their environment and where they live, right? So and then of course they have a different outlook and they have a different experience in our community. So when we talk about socio-economics, first of all, we got to talk about educating our community about the underlying benefits of living a healthy lifestyle. We got to explain to them um, why is it important and how education affects your income, and then the impact of culture that has on our education and on our income, and how it kind of um, levels out into our community. So I like to put it like this, education equals income equals health.
Okay,
Right?
education
So
equal income equal health. Okay, let's go with that. So education equals income equal health. So there's something you were writing here. I want to go right to the page that I saw it in, and you were talking about you talk about education, then you talk about income, and you were bringing up as statistics for the things that we should be doing. These things have been written for decades. This is not new. None of this is new. You were literally following up with statistics from the 90s, from the 80s. You're going back and sharing it with us. This is so simple, but yet we don't do it. Then I love when you go into culture, and I love how you talk about diagnose. First, you diagnose the problem, then you treat it, and then you recover. So explain how you. So when you say that recipe, I as a trainer, I get it. As somebody that's a coach, I get it. But as a chef, man, as somebody that's just, I mean, you because here's the thing, Mark, that some the best food that you make, it might not even be good for us because it's so tasty, right? Especially Caribbean food and food from the Caribbean and from Jamaica and from Puerto Rico. Oh my God, forget about it, right? And but here's the thing: when you go from you basically make this connection. This is what I love. You made a connection about the recipe, and you went back from education, income, and culture. You put those three things together. I mean, seriously, we're not going. Listen, I know you guys want me to read the book. I'm not reading the book for you. You got to get your own book. But I'm just telling you. So tell me, Mark, where you came up with that recipe, how do we make this simplify for everyone that is listening to us and for people that are going to read this book? Share with us your thoughts about how you simplified this recipe.
uh, right. So it goes back to the topic, right? Healing our community one recipe at a time. So what I wanted to actually do there is to illustrate the many recipes that are there to life, right? So we were just talking about culture and our identity and how it influences the way we learn and think and live and behave, right? It's actually the glue that holds our society together. And then it gives us the identity of actually belonging. So you're just mentioning about all these different culture. It kind of like give us a sense of belonging to actually something. So um, in order to heal, right, is like a doctor, right, of medicine. He would have first had to diagnose your illness, right? He need to tell you exactly what was wrong, and then he had to develop a treatment plan for you, right? And then he had to institute some kind of treatment and kind of like prevention plan from having those things from occurring, right? So it's simple. It's similarly with our recipes. If you were to take a food recipe, it's a it's a prescription, right? A recipe is basically what it is. It's a prescription to actually get well. So the purpose of us eating is to like to nourish our bodies, right? And so with this prescription, I just wanted to not only eat but to nourish, to understand there's a difference between just eating food and actually using the food as a tool to nourish bodies for, for health, repair, and growth. So
Stay right there. Stay right there. So I use this analogy that if I have a Camaro, and I have a really nice Camaro, but let's just say I have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, right? And you go to the gas station and you have 87 octane, 88, 90, 91, 90. Some of them have like five of them, but normally you have three, right? But when you go to a dealership and you buy this car, you spent six figures on this car, and then they tell you you need to put high octane gasoline in the car. They tell you you have to put this oil, this type of oil that you're supposed to do, right? And then I'm giving you an analogy because listen, I know no one wants to hear, a lot of people don't want to hear about, you should be eating more greens, you should be eating more this, but I want you to think about it from a different point of view, and maybe you get it today. Because here's the thing: I was healthy at 29 years old and still got cancer. And if I wasn't healthy, I probably wouldn't be here. So the reason that I felt when I started reading this book, and I'm going through the book and I'm thinking, this is such a beautiful thing that God put in my life to do this show, because this book gives people hope. It helps you about, it defines your health in so many different ways. And it helps you, of course, help you with the healing part of your body and restoration, like Mark was talking about, to restore. So go back to Lamborghini, go back to Ferrari, pick your car, pick your poison, right? The oil has to be specific. The tires have to be specific. The lubrication for the tires, for everything. The gasoline has to be specific. If you do all the right things, that car is going to do everything it's promised. Correct, Mark? It's going to do everything it's promised. If you do the right things, right? Now that doesn't mean that there's some DNA, some manufacturer, and some stuff that happens that could make it. You got to go back to the dealership. Things happen, but here's the thing: why would you spend that much money in something and not give it the best treatment and the best recipe and the fuel that it needs to do the best things? So yeah, I want to eat protein. Why? It builds muscle. I want to eat carbohydrates. Why? Because it gives me energy. I want to eat vegetables. Why? For cleansing and for energy as well. There's so many things that this book's going to tell you about vegetables and carbohydrates. You're gonna love it. But we're not there yet. That's going to be later on in the book. But Mark, I tell you, man, that was so really, it was really cool that when you mentioned that. Then the other thing that you were talking about was, let's talk about connecting the food with culture, because that was a big part for the part one of this book, connecting culture to the food. I love that because I'm from Puerto Rico. I love my culture. We love kiss and hugs and we're all, that kind of stuff. But food brings people together in our culture. you know so tell me a little bit about your connection with food and culture.
exactly. So my thought process behind this, it was um, first of all, food is meant for gifting. Was a great Margaret Mead who actually said that, right? And then if you go biblically, talks about let us break bread together, right? So it was a very communal thing, right? It's what was supposed to be bringing us together, and then food food, cultural, and society talks about how we preserve our culture from or cultural dishes from one generation to the next, right? So it's an important connection between the past and the present. But what I actually wanted to show in the book was to use food as a tool to bridge cultural divides. We live in a multicultural, multi-ethnic, very divided nation, and I thought that showing the influence on food and culture and how food has affected, I should say, cultural dishes, has affected the American plate. It would kind of give us a better understanding that that everyone has actually a sense of belonging, right? Later on in the book, I use this term called cross culture. And what I wanted to actually imply here was to actually let everyone have an opportunity to be immersed in someone else's culture. And this was not going and eat the food, but actually being immersed already for a day or a week or how long you do. And actually, in understanding that person's culture and understand some of the ancestral burdens and some of the reasons behind what you actually see on the plate. Sometimes it's okay for us to go and enjoy a taco or a burrito or some jerk chicken or whatever the case may be, whatever, but that is years and years of ancestral trial and error and perfection that we have to get to enjoy that play today. So sometimes when you immerse yourself in someone's culture, you get to really understand. You understand and enjoy that play in in another meaningful way. It's not necessarily going and having a taste for this or having a taste for that, but eating cultural food and understanding cultural heritage, it's actually like night and day. It enlightens you, right? And in this book, what I want it to be was to be an enlightenment to our community, to connect the dots, so that we can understand the influence, of food and culture, on our plate. We one didn't make this country great, right? We all made this country great, and we all brought our cultural influences and our cultural heritage, so that we can call this a true melting pot. And I think sometimes if we understand, if we understand by using food as a tool, it could at least help us
Correct.
to understand the cultural divides and hopefully bridge the cultural divides that we have in our community.
We're going to talk in the last segment of this show this week. We're going to talk a little bit about something about obesity. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. But I wanted to share this quick little story, and it dealt with. I did a TV show where we were going from restaurants from different walks of life, from Middle Eastern to Spanish to all kinds of different Spanish, because Spanish, like Peru, is ceviche, and then you got Puerto Rico, you got arroz con gandule, arroz con garbanzo, you got everything. But what was funny about it, that you were talking about something really interesting that I want to bring up. So I was raised eating pork. I was, in Puerto Rico, we eat the pork, especially for Christmas. And the one of my favorite things to eat is called morcillas. And morcillas, for those of you who don't know, is the pig's intestine. So if I knew what I was eating when I was a kid, I probably would not have eaten it. But because I tasted it, I was hooked for the rest of my life. I can't even give you what it tastes like. It's spicy, but it's really good. But only in Puerto Rico. But I would say that there's a lot of dishes out there. Octopus, I ate octopus. I ate all these other things that the texture I don't get. I don't, whatever. But there's things that I like that I would never have tasted it if it wasn't for, if they would have told me what it was. So, but anyway, so the final segment today, we're going to talk about something that I know a lot about. But this was really, I love how Mark put it in the book. He talks about the 6 most preventable illnesses, right? Deaths, preventable deaths in the US. And the 6 things that you were talking about were, you talking about heart disease, right? Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and you talked about, let me see which are another one. You talked about diabetes, you talked about cancer, you talked about Alzheimer's, or was Alzheimer's one of them too?
Heart disease, cancer, stroke. We talk about lower respiratory diseases, Alzheimer's, diabetes, pneumonia, kidney disease, and we also talk about suicide. It was a lot. I actually mentioned the 6 major ones, but there are a lot of others.
Sure, but I was interested. Of course, you talked about cancer, and of course, you got me at cancer, right? And I knew about heart disease. I know about diabetes, and I know about stroke. And because I've been a trainer, a lot of the things that you were talking about here, I understand about exercise and lungs and circulation and all that stuff. But also the food is a big part of it, because there's things that you could put in your food that basically your workout can be really crappy if you eat this things up. But if you put good fuel in, you go get a better workout, right? But you were talking about suicide, and I thought that that was something I wanted to discuss with you today because people don't understand that part of it is nutrition in terms of your how you feel. Sometimes if we feel tired all the time, lazy, and there's other factors that come in. You talked about depression, you talked about abuse, substance abuse, you talked about physical abuse, which I deal with on a daily basis with my clients. Uh, other things that have happened. Um, being a burden to others, alcohol abuse, things like that. And you talk about diagnosing, and you're not talking about you being the expert. I know that, but you were talking about that, and I wanted you to share why did you add that in the book? Why did you add the suicide part?
Right. So um, one of the fundamentals of healing our society was physical and emotional health, right? So we live in a society, and especially in some of the economically challenged society, right, where 75% of the deaths in the U.S. are are preventable, right? And then we have 50% of those are of heart disease, cancer, and stroke, right? And most of these diseases are linked to unbalanced eating, right? And most of them are linked to uh, diet and nutrition. So the reason I put it there because I want us to understand the importance of eating healthy, the importance of a balanced meal plan. I sometimes don't like to use the word diet because people feel that you're actually trying to create some kind of tasteless atmosphere in your kitchen. No. So I kind of try to use the word more, balanced meal plan. So we cannot talk about health and and as we mentioned before, don't bring in the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspect to actually eating, right? So um, we just mentioned as suicide. So sometimes we tend to negate that aspect because that particular aspect as suicide being one of the 10 top leading causes of death in the United States. So my whole idea of bringing or highlighting those preventable deaths is I wanted to create an evocative picture, as I mentioned before. I want you to not only see the statistics, but to actually put a person behind that statistic because all those deaths there, they are somebody's mom, somebody's dad, somebody's grandpa, uncle, aunt, nephew. There's a person. And sometimes when we stop looking at the numbers and actually see a person, see people, then maybe we can actually come together and say, uh, um, uh, and determine collectively that we need to get healed as a community. It's not good if one person is eating healthy, and it's important that all of us are eating healthy. You were just talking about your Lamborghini and your Camaro, but it's like this. You have this sports car as you were just um, illustrating, but then we always go and we put prime. No one would take a Mercedes Benz and put standard gas, right? We always look for the best. The reason why we put that top level gasoline in our cars because we want it to run to its optimum potential. We want it to run as the incredible machine it was created to be, it was made to be, right? The same thing for our bodies, right? We can't want to live a healthy life and then we actually put junk in our bodies. So the importance of the nutrition we put in our body has a direct correlation, to the state of our well-being. And why I wanted to look at this holistically is because if we only take care of our physical health, then what happens to our emotional health, right? Then what happens to our spiritual health? So nutrition is there to fortify our body, to provide the building blocks for growth and development. But to actually grow as a community, we need to grow, as I mentioned before, we need to grow the physical body, right? With eating all your broccoli, your kale, and sweet potatoes, right? And then you need to take care of your mental and spiritual health that will actually create a wholesome person. So the important thing that I want you to take from this is that when you're dealing with health, you must, or I should say, we must approach it from a holistic point of view, where holistic medicines, they really don't treat symptoms, right? They treat causes. So they would look, instead of giving you a prescription for something, they'll say, oh no, but this is what he's actually having. Let's go and see the reason that is causing that. So they may have to do a full evaluation of your entire body just to see why you're having the stomach pain. And using that approach, we can actually create a platform for a healthy building block for our community.
And with that, we're going to have to, say goodbye for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about obesity. We're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about moving. We're going to talk about physical activity. We're going to talk about all those things next week and much, much more with Mark. But I want you guys to understand, when you watch this video and listen to what Mark is talking about, how cultures come together, income, education, and culture are part of the recipe that it would make this world a better place. Number one. Number two, he's talking about diseases. And here's the thing: if you're not feeling well, right, because you're not eating well, that's going to affect your mental state, and it's certainly going to affect your physical state. So everything comes together with food. So that's why I love how a chef decides to do a book about healing the community, one recipe at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a prescription, and I hope that for the next few weeks, you continue to follow us as we go cover to cover on this amazing masterpiece from the writer, the author himself, Chef Mark Wright. Again, thank you for joining us. Next week, we'll be back at 8 p.m. live with you for the next few weeks. And again, I always leave with my message to find hope, have faith, and live with purpose. And again, thank you for joining us on Hope, Health,